So there's been a bit of a trend around recently which is going to set us up perfectly to start studying our new topic. That topic is going to be folk music, and the trend has of course been sea shanties. They were a type of traditional folk song that was once commonly sung to accompany rhythmical work and jobs aboard large ships. So those jobs could have been things like rowing, or scrubbing the deck, lowering and raising the anchor, loading goods, or maybe even raising the sails. And all these things, if they're done with a bit of a rhythm behind them, then the crew might end up working a little bit better and probably enjoy the task at hand much more than if they were just told to do it, perhaps in silence. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to start using Chromelab again, Songmaker, and as you can see we'll be using 7-note scales, which we actually often call modes. Okay, if I just point out here, the first shanty is based around the Dorian Mode, which we will create using the note row of D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. So that's there, D all the way up to D again, rather than usually how we'd play C to C. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, this will start one note higher than our lowest note of C, so you're going to have to be aware of that when you look over into your grid on Songmaker. So there's our C, our lowest note at our thick line, but we're actually going to be starting from the next note up, which is D. And a lot of these shanties actually have a darker sort of flavour or sound to them, and that's to do with the distances between the notes. Okay, if you can see here, if we were to go from C to C, we'd actually have what we call a tone. So we'd have to take 2 steps, another tone, before we get to just 1/2 step, which would be called a semitone. If we go from D, we actually get to that semitone much, much earlier. So here's a tone, and then we're at that semitone straight away. So we'll cover that again another time when we're looking more at tonality, but we'll just take it for given today that we're going to get a slightly darker sound if we start on D. You'll see also that I've shown 2 octaves here, but you will also use another one in order to be able to achieve or reach all of the notes that you need. So I'm just going to show you what to do in terms of your setup. You'll go to settings as usual, and you'll set your length to 8 bars, you'll start on to low C, and your range to 3 octaves. Remember, low C because we're going to go 1 note higher, and you'll see why we need that C before too long. So let's just do that together. You could follow what I'm doing and then pause the video and give it a go yourself. So here we go, I'm going to change my length to 8 bars, so I'm going to change my note to low C, and I'm going to change it to 3 octaves. Alright, so that's all done, and I'm ready to go. So you could pause it here and get that set up yourself, and then we'll be ready to start together. I'm just going to change this to piano. We talked about that last time, so you should know why. The note on marimba won't be high enough. Alright, so I'm going to hope that you are now set up, or you're just watching and you're going to give it a go afterwards. But here we go. The first shanty that we're going to have a look at is the classic Drunken Sailor. Okay, now I know that there have been a few other shanties going around on TikTok and different social media, and even on the news now. And we'll come to that a little bit later, but let's go with this one because it is classic and it's quite easy to get together to begin with. Alright, now slide your tempo to around 200 BPM. Make sure you remember to use your scroll so that you're finding the correct octave that you're in. Alright, and then I've actually given you the notes that you need straight on the grid here. Okay, so you can copy that and follow it along. I would like you to start really thinking about the grid now if you were just using colours previously, because a few people were using colours and they weren't quite getting the melody right, or they were sort of getting confused when they were going into the settings and changing the note they were starting on. So really focus on the notes that you're using and visualising that. So I'm going to go back and I'll just walk you through that. If your lowest note here is C, then you know that all of the other notes are going to follow that 7-note row, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then you're back at C again, D, E, F, G, A, B, you're back at C again. So really start to see those notes. The colours are helpful, but the colours won't always be there, they're only there within Songmaker. So when we start using some more complex software, you will start to struggle. Okay, now the first note we needed was A. Now just to go back to the slides for a second, be aware that that A is in the second octave. You can see here, it's in the second octave. Okay, so let's just go back. Like I said, I've not put my tempo up to about, well, there you go, 208 will do. And then I need an A. So I know that A is going to be there because I got my eye in with Songmaker. You will have that pretty soon as well if you practice. If you know that a C is there, then a B is one note lower and A is there. You haven't actually got to count up from the lowest C. You can use the next octave as well to help you. Now the rhythm you'll have to kind of follow along using the slide and just sort of copy the rhythm, looking at these different beats. Remember, beat 1, 2, 3, 4 of the first bar, beat 1, 2, 3, 4 of the second bar. They're shaded different colours, white and grey, to help you see that. But here I will talk through how we would maybe talk about this rhythm. We could call that a crotchet with 2 quavers within it, or we could actually count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, if we were just going to talk about the numbers. So this rhythm should go 1, 2 and 3, 4 and then we start here, 1, and then we need to go down to a D, 2, 3, 4. So we could say that was 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And in fact that series of notes there, if you already play the piano, or if you remember anything from being able to get on the keyboards when we could briefly do that, you will see that as a D chord, a D minor chord. And we're actually going to move down a note and we're going to go to G, follow the same rhythm, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and now we're going to play a C chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually it's a really kind of simple phrase with a simple repetitive rhythm that is just exactly the same as the first 2 bars, but just 1 note lower, and it utilises that C major and that D minor chord. But remember, we're based around D, and I'll show you how to make that a little bit more kind of sturdy and obvious later on. But let's just go back to our slides. So that was pretty quick, wasn't it? So we've got our Drunken Sailor Part 1. Let's move on to Part 2. We've only got 8 bars in this song. So you can see that actually instead of going down, it's going to start to rise up. Very similar rhythm. And then actually we just get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, nothing on 2 or 4 here. Okay, so let's just go back to Chromelab and get that stuck in. So let's move over to our 5th bar here. We go back to A, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and then we need 1, 2, climbing up, 3, 4. There's our 3rd octave. We needed to get high enough there. And then the notes that we need are C, A, G, E, D, and then we miss beat 2, we get to beat 3 here. Okay, so let's just have a quick listen to that, and that should sound a little bit like, or it should sound exactly like Drunken Sailor. I'm going to turn it up a little bit faster so that we don't have to wait for ages. Maybe not 240, but over 220 would be good. So here we go, back to the start. So there is our sea shanty inputted into or sequenced into Chromelab. If we just go back to the slides, if you go on to the next one, it says, let's add some accompaniment to our melody by adding some root notes. And I've given you the root notes that could actually give this a little bit more depth and also a little bit of rhythm perhaps. And you can see it goes D, 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 the first 2 bars, C, 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 and bar 3 and 4. Then if we move on to the next slide, you'll see that it actually goes to, I'll get to the next slide, it goes D, 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 5 and 6, and then it goes C, C for 7, and then back to D for 8. So you can see that D is a really, really strong note here because that is the root note, the home note for our key, okay, our key of D. And remember that word Dorian Mode, that's a really nice word to know, Dorian. Okay, so let's just go back and let's get those notes in. So we need C's our lowest. So this is why we needed that low octave. We're just going to put them on beat 1 and beat 3. Okay, and then we go to C. And then we're going to go back to D, bars 5 and 6. And then we'll have 7, C, D. And let's have a little listen to that, and that should give us a little bit more depth, as I said, a little bit more kind of, well, it should sound a little bit more like a piece of music rather than just the tune, just the melody. So there we go, that's it. Now you could start to add in some drums if you wanted to, because obviously that bass drum, have we got a different, let's go for a kit rather than electronic. That bass drum might actually make it sort of sound like the sailors or the pirates are stamping their feet whilst they're singing it. And you could, if you wanted to, give it your alternating snare drums, which is where they might clap. So we could put that in. So they're stamping on beat 1, clapping on beat 2, stamping on beat 3, clapping on beat 4. Let's have a little listen. Oh, missed those first ones. So there we go. And you could, if you wanted to, take some tips from me here, and at the end of each 4-bar cycle you could actually create a little bit of a drum fill if you wanted to. So there's our 4th bar, and then the next 4 bars, the last one will be 8. I'm going to create something a little bit different. So I've just put a bit of an extra bass drum in there, and then a bit of a drum fill on the snare. So let's have a little listen to how that sounds. So you can see how that just creates a little bit of interest so it doesn't get boring. So some of you are probably thinking, oh yeah, but what about the next verse of Drunken Sailor? Well, actually, you could extend it to be 16 bars long rather than 8 bars long, but you could just take this and vary it, because I think actually all that happens in the second verse is they take out some of the rhythms. Because it goes, what shall we do with a drunken sailor? So that would have been the, what shall we do with a drunken sailor? And then I think it goes, ooh, ray, and up she rises. So that would just be, ooh, ray, and up she rises. And that would be the same here, ooh, ray, and up she rises. So there we go. And then you'd have to change it here as well. So there we go. That's our Drunken Sailor piece, basically. So you could do all sorts of things there if you wanted to. If you wanted to really get into playing around with Chromelab, especially if you've got a little bit of musical knowledge, you could actually take 5 notes above your root note and create a bit of a rocking motion in your bass part. But this would be really sort of extension work. And you can see that I've actually put that final one, that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've put it on the and there, which will give it a little bit of a more interesting rhythm. And I'll put 2 on there, just for a bit more variation. And what I might actually do here is I might actually, rather than going up there, I might go down here. So I'm not 100% sure that that's going to work. I think it should work, but I'm just sort of experimenting with the patterns that are going on here to create something that could sound pretty good. 1 and 2. Dun, 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 dun. Right, let's see what that bass line looks like now when we play that through. So it got a little bit too funky. I think this bit here, I didn't intend to do that. And let's try that. So it's still a bit too funky, but you see the idea. You can sort of play around and make it a little bit more interesting. I mean, now that sounds a little bit more what we would call syncopated, with these notes happening on the and of the beat, the off beat. It's a bit more syncopated than the sailors would have been back in the day, but once you've done it properly and you've got it in straight and traditionally, there's no problem with having a little bit of a play around and making it a bit more interesting for yourself. So that's pretty much it for today. I'd like you to get that sea shanty into Songmaker. Make sure you are sort of understanding the scale, the modes, the note row of 7 notes that we set up here, that Dorian mode, and you're starting to think about that, and you're looking at how the notes work and connect with each other, because we'll be talking about that a little bit more as we move on. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. We will be continuing our nautical journey, so make sure you've caught up by next time. And it's probably quite nice to end with this great inspiring quote, which is, "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor," which means that if you are struggling with this, or if it doesn't work the first time, then you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going, and it will sound good with just that little bit of extra practice. Okay, so have fun, and I'll catch up with you all soon.